We interrupt my regularly scheduled videos on repairing guitar amplifiers and motorcycle engines and what have you for this important video on the repair of my Dyson vacuum cleaner. This is a model SV03. This is the battery-powered vacuum cleaner from Dyson, a 21.6 volts that pulls a whopping 16.2 amps. Wow, that's impressive. And while it's of little consequence to the motor, this particular package for this Dyson vacuum cleaner is called the V6 Slim. I'll tell you what happened with this vacuum cleaner, and I didn't take any performance measurements with this when I bought it brand new, which for me is abnormal, right? I got it and we used it, but I'll tell you that to do the house with this, with the stopping to empty the basket and go around shutting off between rooms and what have you, it takes about 20 minutes to vacuum. When I vacuum, it's mostly for dust and dog hair. I don't use the max button. It's regular, and the attachment that I use on the bottom does not have any electric brush, right? So we don't have carpet, we have tile. So it's about 20 minutes without the need for any electric brush, brand new out of the box. And with that 20 minutes, I could get the entire house done. If I move to go and then do something else at that point, the vacuum cleaner dies and the system flashes here. It's time to recharge it again. The problem is that as of late, the performance has significantly diminished, not in its vacuuming ability, ironically, but in the amount of time it runs before it dies. And that has dropped exponentially to now like 2 minutes to 30 seconds to, yeah, pretty much stays between 30 seconds and a minute, and then it cuts off. And you run it, and what flashes is the blue light, the slow blue flash. Now, if I look in the book, it says a slow blue flash is lack of power. The battery is flat, and I need to charge it, right? And I've seen the blue flash before when it's time to charge a battery. I've never seen any other indication on this unit at any time. So I would think, as anybody else would, that there's a problem with the battery. Maybe the battery just doesn't have any more power. Now, is it possible this unit has a defective battery and it can only hold like 2 minutes charge now? Something terrible happened, a cell shorted out? Probably not, right? Because as I look here, it's a 6-cell battery, and if a particular cell had gone out, the voltage itself would have dropped, not the overall storage capacity. It's a 2100 milliamp hour battery, right? So nah, I don't think that's the case, right? And I'll tell you what I did to go through this, right? And I'd already evaluated, obviously, that it didn't work, but I had to start at the charger. It does state here that the charging voltage is 26 volts, so it is worth testing right quick if you have a multimeter, so I'll do that right quick. Yeah, sure enough, this charger's reading 26 volts. And you may not have a multimeter, or you may have no business sticking things into outlets, right? So I caution you not to do it if you don't know what you're doing, but a good indication to see if the charger's working is simply to plug in the unit. And if you see the blue light come on that is charging, and then after however many hours turn out, it's probably a good sign that your charger's got power and it's charging the unit. So it's a safe bet that the charger is working properly. And here's my theory. I think that in these events, it's not flashing amber for the temporary fault, it's actually flashing blue in these cases, which is making you think that it's a flat battery, when in fact the problem is the sensor that tells it it's getting too hot. The thermal sensor is triggering this because there is too much resistance inside the unit, aka the unit's filthy inside. And why do I believe this theory to be true? You'll probably notice that this vacuum cleaner is immaculate. It is perfectly clean. And the reason is, I've already fixed this one. This one, again, would go about, it's getting worse and worse. It would get down to about a minute or so and die with a flashing blue light on a full charge. Having looked at two possibilities ruling out the charger, it could either be because the battery performance was gone, or because there was so much internal resistance in this unit that it was no longer able to sustain operation without overheating. What I'm going to do is show you how I clean this, which goes well above and beyond what's specified in the manual. And I will say, to the credit of Dyson, they do call out the fact that this thing should be serviced monthly. Just because they're bag-free does not mean they're maintenance-free. However, in reviewing what they call out with regard to the maintenance that's conducted for these units, it is insufficient, and I'm going to show you why it's insufficient, how to do it properly and get this device running like brand new. Also, I don't feel like going through this entire instructional getting covered in sand, dog hair, and fart dust, so this will work out really nicely. I gotta point this out first and foremost because if you're having this issue when something is connected in, and I'm just using this small device in effigy, it could be one of the long poles with the entire connector on, and it's only running for 2 minutes and it dies. And you leave it alone, you put it back on the charger, you do whatever, you come back later to run this test, and you take back off all the connectors, so it's just this unit. And it runs just fine for however long amount of time, like many, many minutes. The blockage could be in the long tube or the end connecting device, right? So you want to go through there and check. It may not be in here. This is only, or maintenance should be done all the time, of course, but as far as addressing this specific problem should only be done if it's cutting out after a minute or two when there's nothing connected to the end of this, isolating the problem to this specific unit. And we're going to start off by the removal of the basket. Now, the basket obviously is generally used to remove all the garbage, right? But what you do is after you've opened the basket once and you release that lever, you push down that lever again, right? And you see the basket just attached, right? And now this whole piece can come right off. For this, I just wash it out. I got one of those nylon brushes that I could scrub it out in the sink. I know there's some electrical connections here, so when I wash that out, you could take some canned air and blow that out and dry it. I actually have a compressor in the garage, and I blow that out with some compressed air, but canned air will do just fine. Remember, once we start working on this stuff, it's going to have to dry thoroughly overnight or more until everything's dry. I can't stress that enough. Make it clean, make it dry before you reassemble. So this is nice and clean, obviously. And then we put it off to the side. And we're still lockstep with the book right now because according to the book, we would be right here, and then we would take this brush right here and we would brush off any debris off of this screen. And we would go no deeper, pretty much it, and the vacuum cleaner would be ready for service. Absolutely not. And not only absolutely not, but if you live in Florida or any place that's humid, boy, you're in for a surprise, because just brushing off this screen is hardly sufficient to get this vacuum cleaner clean, especially if you have never gone any deeper than this. And these are delicate items, so use a gentle touch. If you don't feel you could do this, don't. I'm not responsible for anything you break. Bring it to a vacuum cleaner repairman if you're not capable of doing so. I have a small flathead screwdriver, and there's a base right here that I come in to this section just to pivot, right? There's a bunch of little notches that go around here, right? And I found that sometimes I could just get my finger under it and start pulling away at this. Once you get it going, it gets easier. There they are. Don't grab onto any of the soft sections. We're just working on this top plastic piece here. No sense in breaking anything. Wouldn't be worth it. There it is. Take a look at this connector here. We can just see that they're just little snaps that we're just prying away. That's all it is. With this removed, I give this a thorough washing in the sink. That's all. You know, once it's removed, it's very easy to put in the sink and clean this up properly, nice and clean. Then I set this to dry, put this off to the side. We could see they're just little tiny snaps that lock that thing into place. Just getting the screwdriver under there and prying them up is all that is required to get that thing going. Another reason why I'm working on an already cleaned one, you would not be able to see any of this, which is what I'm going to get to next. When I had opened this unit, you cannot see that there were screws down here. This was completely impacted, the screw holes and most of these fins with dirt. The dirt and moisture had come together to form what looked like concrete. All up inside here in all of these passages had been completely filled. It was absolutely disgusting. Inside here, this wasn't completely enclosed, but you really couldn't tell what was going on in here. It was impacted with a substance that looked like concrete. It was not in a good way. And it was not until I went outside and, mind you, have a mask on when doing this. And what I did was I went and I did take a brush and loosened the matter around here as best I could, and then I blew it out with an air compressor. I'll point out that it could be argued to some extent, given the removal of the filter, which I'm going to do now, by the way. I'm just going to take that out before I forget, because that pops right out. One could argue, and I don't think you could do this with canned air, but you could leave that last cover on if you do regular maintenance without having to take it off. You could take an air compressor and blow out the inside here with a mask on, please. And then you could actually blow out the inside here if you've removed that top filter. And you would make a cloud the size of a city block with God knows what coming out of here. And that would be enough to blow out this unit. But if you've never done it before, like I'm doing, you're just watching me do this. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing the actual breakdown. So you can loosen up matter that just won't come loose with air with a brush. At least enough to expose these screws here, because the next thing I'm going to do is remove this shroud. And this shroud is gasketed. It is 5T9 type screws. So I'm going to remove them now. Put the 5 screws off to the side where you don't lose them. With the shroud removed, again, another item that could simply be washed in the sink and put to the side to dry. This inner portion, again, can be further cleaned. Mind, this looks like a silicone gasket right here. Don't damage this gasket, very important. Stubborn areas, again, can be hit with this brush. I also used a paintbrush to get deep inside these crevices to clean them out. Then I used an air compressor to blow out everything. This further exposes a weak point in this vacuum cleaner. You'll notice that the air circulates through these holes to create like a turbine. We can see these lower holes here in the white portions, and then you could see further back these black tubes, right? And I guess they make some sort of circular motion that aligns itself to these indentations on the center shaft. What I had found when I opened mine up was that these holes were reduced significantly in their internal size. They had built up so much crud had built up on these that they were asthmatic. They were suffering to get air because there was so much restriction in there. When I blew this thing out with air, it was absolutely amazing what a night and day difference. And it was like chunks of stuff, because again, living in Florida, you have moisture and then you have dust, and the dust and moisture settle together and they form like a crust, and then the next layer and the next layer, and then over time they shrink down as another layer forms, and you need really high pressure in another direction to bust that out. And the fact that the air comes in and is random in different directions and agitates is enough to free that up. And the fact that it could be blown in this direction down and that direction up is what did the trick, until I could look in the light outside and see that all of this was perfectly cleaned out. And I took my time. I found that with the compressor and the right attachment at that point, even canned air, because there's visibility here, that taking a tube and being able to go into these holes and blow air directly and get everything out of these to have it free flowing was satisfactory. I did not find that I had to go into these screws. There's further screws up here, several of them, that allow it to disconnect the top from the bottom. I thought this to be unnecessary for this repair. So I'm saying that this does not have to be done as long as you make sure you've gotten all the contaminants out. It's not entirely necessary, but I'm going to do this to demonstrate how to remove this piece. I did find within this piece here, there is stuff that actually gets down, even though there's a screen that's supposed to stop that from happening. So if you're on the fence about getting a new filter, or you want to wash this one and you're not sure if there's stuff that got on the inside of here, right? It is possible, as I'm showing now, to go in and push these tabs down gently, right? Don't go crazy. And slide this open like this. When I slid mine open, up to here, not too bad, but just up to here was filled entirely with dog hair and dirt that was on the inside of the filter. Should not be here, right? So I did get all that out. I washed this piece really quickly. It was when I looked inside here that I saw the nightmare, the horror story. And I'm not saying you have to remove this plastic cover. I'm doing it just so we'll be able to look inside. But this was filthy. And in Florida, with the humidity, washing it gently in the sink just causes all that dust to like congeal into like what looks like plaster, and it makes the filter completely unusable. So I'm in the guest shower here, just washing all of the garbage out from the outside in, right, to get it all out, and it was just pouring out black onto the shower floor. It was disgusting. I just want to see what it looks like now that I've washed it out. So now it's a lot cleaner. But it was unbelievable what collects in here. When they say that this is a filterless vacuum, it really isn't a filterless vacuum. It's a convenience, but there's actually there's a maintenance required, especially again if you live down south where there's a lot of humidity for all this stuff to build up.
Well, it also just saved $16.95.
And I also just saved $16.95 in getting a new filter. Again, if you're willing to open this up, it does make it a bit easier. Not necessary to take this cage off. So now I'm going to place this back on, just like that, and snap these pieces, these three pieces, back into position. There's one, there's two, and three fell in. And I'm just going to let this dry overnight. This is now perfectly clean. When it is dry in the morning, this will go back in the vacuum, good as new. I assume over 24 hours has passed for you. All of your parts are clean and dry, ready for assembly. We notice that the shape of this is not the same in the rear. This points towards the back. So this piece will go just like that, back onto the unit. I'll start putting in the screws, not tight until all of the screws are back in. And then once they're back in, I will tighten them. So they're just going to go in so that there's no slack, holding the piece back in place onto the gasket. With the last screw in, I'll give each screw just 1/8 of a turn. That's it, this shroud's back on. Follow up with this piece. Put this back into position. This tab here is forward. And these all just snap right back into position. Just like that. Next, we'll reintroduce the basket. There is a latch on the front you can see right here and a catch for that latch. So it will lock in the front and then snap in the back. Then close the basket. Of all of the pieces, the filter takes the longest to dry. Feel the filter. If the filter is not dry, you're going to have to wait maybe another day. Don't know what to tell you, but this must be dry. It is absolutely critical. If you start vacuuming and the filter is not completely dry, you're going to destroy the filter again. You're going to have to rewash everything because all the dirt is going to bind and collect onto this. Right back in the unit. This unit is now fully assembled. It will go onto the charger for a complete charge so we can do a baseline test. And this vacuum cleaner has been charging on its base the entire evening. We can see that the charge light has gone out, right? So if I were to remove it and place it back in, we can see the charge light turns back on. So it was completely charged. I'm going to be getting a baseline of where this vacuum cleaner is at with regard to the endurance of the battery. I'm going to be doing it in the easiest way possible. Going to be running the vacuum cleaner. There's no attachment at the end. It's going to be running on the non-max mode, the normal mode. I'm going to just tape the connector here and run the stopwatch. See how long it goes before it dies. Right there, 1723, around there, we could see the blinking blue light. This is the slow blinking blue light to show that the battery is depleted. I meant to say 1623. And if I account for the several trips I make to the garbage can because of the small bin, the shutting off of the vacuum cleaner to go room to room, it will account for the extra couple of minutes that would bring this to the 20 minutes that I usually spend to vacuum up the floor into the house. So it seems as though, based on these numbers, that this vacuum cleaner is now back to its full working order, full working capacity. Everything is fine. I could now use these numbers as a basis for good working order in the future whenever there's a problem. And as it turned out, even though the manual had stated that there was a low battery issue, it turned out to be a resistance issue, and I was getting a false indication. There was no problem with the battery whatsoever. Resistance problem, and it was solved simply by cleaning it. So I hope you found this video to be helpful as part of a maintenance regiment, as well as troubleshooting this problem that seems to occur with these Dyson vacuum cleaners, particularly this SV03. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Thanks for watching.